Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beattys Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 21st of March. We've really been looking forward to this one. Alan Kuhre is going to show us some bonefish flies. Looking forward to that. We don't often get to do bone fishing here in Idaho. And on the weekly tip, well, we're going to get a touch of LaFontaine magic. But for now, we're the Beattys from Boise, Idaho. And let me bring in our good friend from Florida, Alan Kerr, and we will tell you just a little bit about him. Alan retired from the U.S. Dental Army Corps after a 20-year career with lots of time in Korea, Georgia, and North Carolina. He now lives full-time in Naples, Florida. Since 2003, his strong passion for fly fishing has led him to many lodges scattered throughout the Bahamas, as well as several in Latin America. At home, he regularly fishes from a kayak, pursuing most of the inshore saltwater species available year-round. One of his favorite fish to pursue is bonefish. After even an ever popular game fish, there are many flies to consider depending on whether wading, kayaking, or on a skiff. Tonight, he will focus on three flies in particular that he always has along when bone fishing. The first is a traditional pattern, and the other two are known only by a select few, and you're going to be on the receiving end tonight. Alan, the show is all yours.
Thank you, Al. Really great to see so many people sign in tonight. I know there's a lot of good basketball on being played, and hopefully you all have some interest in or have had the experience of pursuing bonefish. I find them extremely satisfying. You're doing basically a lot of hunting. And as Al mentioned in the intro, I've been over to Andros in particular, probably 20 plus times, anywhere from three days to 6 days with guided fishing. And then as I got experienced and my casting improved, I did a lot of DIY trips to Great Inagua, Long Island, uh, Acklands Island, and Abaco. We do have bonefish here in the States, pretty much in Florida, especially in the Keys. They've struggled a bit, the fishery, but I'm glad to say that in the last few years, it's really come back. And it's a catch and release fish pretty much anywhere you go now. My first fly I'm going to tie is a very traditional fly that I used 20 years ago, the gotcha. And it's one that's really good for sandy bottom and marl. Uh, and I've had real good success with that pattern. Probably the first fly I put on the end of my leader when I'm on a skiff. When I'm wading, I will go to a little less traditional pattern, one of which is a shrimp pattern, which I'll be tying last tonight, called the Bokea shrimp. And I'll describe a little more about that as we get started with that pattern. And then the middle one is a pattern that Dwayne Neemore, his father, who's no longer with us, Ivan, passed away about 12 to 15 years ago. He and Ray Mackey operated Tranquility Hill Fishing Lodge. And Ivan, nicknamed the Legend, he really got fly fishing along with Charlie Smith going there in Andros. But Dwayne showed me his dad's pattern called Ivan's Red Butt. Strange name, but a very effective shallow water pattern that I'll be tying after the gotcha. So Al, if we could, let's go ahead and get started with that first material sheet. You can see I prefer a number 4 hook on this pattern. I've never used a 6 over an Andros. They got big fish and they're pulling hard, and a 6 just doesn't seem to give them enough to interest. But a 4 or a number 2, you could tie this pattern. All the thread I use is Danville's 210 denier flat wax nylon, and depending on the pattern, it'll be white, tan, or and with a pink for the head. For some reason, that pink head makes a huge difference over there. On the tail of this fly, that flashy stuff, I use extra large pearl braid. The body, in this case, is pearl polar flash and we'll go over the application of that. The wing, ideally, I know some people in the audience, we've been talking about polar bear. It's not something you pick up at the fly shop, but folks have it, and it's been passed down. I have a little bit, and it's just an iridescent, incredible fur that the bonefish just don't see that, and it's nothing like any other hair that you put on a bonefish fly. And the eyes, I use extra small lead dumbbell or an equivalent weight. I find on the gotcha the yellow with black pupils is probably best. If I wanted to fish super shallow, I'd go with medium or large gold bead chain. This here is the precious little piece left of the polar bear. I've got bucktail as an option or some EP fiber. This is the Flashaboo I mentioned about wrapping with the body and various lead eyes here. And the Tiemco 401 is a saltwater hook. This is in a number 4. And the 811S, I'm sorry, the Umpqua 401, the 811S by Tiemco, some people have had experiences, and I have too, where the hook will break near the bend. And I think it's after the putting it in the vise, you stress it out or whatever. But I've had some of the best bonefish break the fly when I put a little pressure on it. So anyhow, let's get started with tying. You can see the tail will start basically applying the tail material, body, then the wing. We're going to get the eyes on. So, all right, I'll try to. If there's any questions, I should be able to hear you, or use the chat, please. And that's the hook and the vise. Let's see if we can. I'm going to use white thread. Again, that 210 denier. Just get a nice thread base. The eye of the hook wasn't completely closed, kind of frayed that thread a little bit. Hell, I think it's going to be one of them nights. If it can happen, it's going to happen. Anyway. I like to go back, get my eyes in place, make sure I have enough room for everything else so I don't crowd the hook. Okay. And the 5/32 lead eye, just figure 8 that, about 5-6 wraps one side, capture the other. And as you wrap, it'll turn into its proper position. Bring the thread back to just about the bend of the hook. Let's just tilt that a little bit. All right, what we're going to add is the extra large pearl braid. It comes in this, it's really bright here, this tube. And you peel back the inner core, grab a bit, and then just cut. You want that frayed look, of course, not near as long as that. And just past the bend of the hook where it extends is where we're going to give it a clip. A little too bright for my liking. Okay, then next we're going to get some of this Flashaboo. I like to grab 2 or 3 strands. And we're just going to palmer them forward. I've got a few extras. Here we go. This is one of these materials that you don't have much humidity. It flies everywhere. I know that's out west a common problem, but even today with a little north wind, low humidity, things are flying around a little bit with a static. Okay, so I've got that. There's several strands, and I'm just gonna, instead of doing a half hitch, I just like to cover the body. I use a white thread mainly for this reason. The body is a little too dark with a tan thread base underneath this polar flash. So you can play with it. If you want a darker, less prominent, I'll call it, uh, body, then use a tan thread, and it makes a noticeable difference. So I got that underneath, just tie her off. You can see we got the tail and the body all set. Now over in the Bahamas, I rarely will put a weed guard on a fly or have any need for one. It's all sand, rocky marl, things like that. And having a weed guard on isn't very useful. But if I'm in the Keys or in other locations where you have turtle grass, you're going to want to put a weed guard on. And we're going to put a weed guard on a different fly this evening, but they can be very effective. Okay, so we've got all that's really left here is to get the wing on and then develop a nice head. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use a little bit of polar bear tonight. Just taking a small pinch. There's not a lot of under fur, but there's a little bit. We had a gentleman the other night I think on Al's program talking about dyeing this stuff, and I just cringed. I couldn't see why the heck you would dye something like this. But anyway, it's like a brass bed painting it. It makes no sense to me. Such a beautiful. And a little extra. And this is just, I'm going to really hog down on it, support the hook. And the magic touch as we go. Let me whip finish. Then we'll get some pink thread to go over this. That's nice and snug. That's might be a little generous on the polar bear, but yep, have too much, you can always trim it. So let's get a little pink thread on there. I'm just trying to create a nice cover over that white. And most of the shape of the head's already completed. As far as the history of this fly, I don't know. It's been around quite a while. Whether it's a shrimpy crab pattern or a little bait fish, I don't know. I think Aaron Adams did a real nice couple chapters in Chico Fernandez's book on bone fishing. And the bonefish do eat a lot of bait fish, a lot of little mahara, especially in the Keys. And I think the diet is geographically dependent as far as what's there. But that's the gotcha. And the 5/32 eyeballs, that's good for relatively calm water, not much of a current, and probably anywhere from 8 to 18 inches. These 5/32 extra small lead eyes would work really well. And if you're going to go real skinny, of course, same pattern, just put on some bead chain, and that would work fine, probably silver. This is Ivan's red butt. Like I mentioned, his son, Dwayne, he still guides. out of Tranquility Hill. His dad came up with this pattern. As you can see in the photo, the obvious name there, that little red piece of, you can use anything, EP fiber. Tonight I'm going to try to use a little bit of cross-cut red bunny and just clip it, but you add that. And then the body is similar to using Polar Flash on the previous fly. I like to just take probably a 16-inch piece of pearl Krelink, or however you pronounce it. It's available in a lot of sewing stores. They have various colors, very durable stuff. And again, palmering that on the body. And then I'll add a couple of the black and white silly legs. I think the fly on the top, I tried it with, I believe that was the Lady Amherst, just a more natural material. And again, a little bit of polar bear for the wing. And you can either leave it tan or add pink for the head. And so we'll go ahead and get started on that. And being, of course, the bead chain, and relatively small bead chain at that, I would recommend saving this for tailing fish, or when they're on the sand, or shallow water, a foot or less. And they'll get down there just fine with probably 15-pound bite tip at 20 if you're a little concerned about it breaking off. All right, so I'm going to go with a tan 210 denier, get a nice thread base. And I'll come back and put in the bead chain. Nothing special on this particular bead chain, the silver. I just use a wire cutter, cut a section off for the eyes. So this would be for tailing fish, real shallow. Got a little bit of rabbit strip here. You can see that. Looks a little more orange than what it is. So get a little bunch here. And this one, we're going to trim off the tips. So kind of unusual. Most patterns you want a nice bushy fly, but kind of like Norm Ziegler does on his Schminnow pattern. Cuts off the tips of that marabou. Get a blunt. And I'm just going to go just past the bend of the hook. That works pretty well. And we'll get out a long piece of that Krelink. This is how it comes in the spool. This particular color is number 32. Okay. I cover up all that red there. Don't really want that coming through. Fish won't care. And you want touching wraps here. Could probably do a half hitch and use this rotary vise as it's designed, but we'll get through. As I get near the head, I'm probably just going to create some shoulders on this fly, go wrap on top of itself, because it looks like I got enough material. So a little thicker near the eyes. That should do. Okay. See, it looks like it's pointing up. All right, and then you can add some. I like to add a few silly legs. I've got some. See where it. Anyway, silly legs,
Yep,
barred, clear pearl,
that's
white
that's showing
river.
up real good, Alan. That's showing up real good.
Okay, thank you, Al. And the wing's going to cover up all this tie in here. Al, getting used to these scissors. One of these days I'll actually be wearing them while I'm tying. That hadn't come yet.
I was
But
watching you use those, and I was saying, "Oh, I've noticed that's a difference in what you tied with last year."
yeah, those whiz, they're terrific. All right, I think we got enough for a decent wing. Let's just like a loose wrap or two and then pull it to clear the hook eye. Wrap forward. And again, I think you could fish this as is with a tan. It's not bad, but I'm going to go with a little pink because it's available. Pink thread to create, just overlap the head, thread head. I'm going to put a little bit of that UV thick on the thread here, and it'll add a nice luster and protection. That's kind of what we're on the top, more or less. Should ride pretty much hook point up in the water, something like that. The length, shorten these a little bit. Might as well get all four. Sometimes I'll shorten the outboard legs a little bit shorter than the inside. Well, let's add a little bit of the UV to the thread. Use your bodkin, works real well.
While you're doing that, Fred would like to know how you fish it. How far do you lead the fish and all that kind of stuff?
That's a good question. And like any good question, you can always say it depends, but let me give you more information on that. The if you're dealing, one thing you want to get that fly down to the fish. You don't want him to have to swim up towards the surface. So let's just say calm conditions, no current, fish are running along the shoreline, kind of a nice sandy bottom, so you don't have any issues with it fouling, not a particularly lot of obstructions. Um, say you're 35, 40 feet away, which is a nice distance. Um, I would present that fly. If the fish is, they're rarely still, they just move all the time. But if they're moving, say from your left to your right at a less than a walking pace, I would probably try to have that fly land at least in their line, if maybe a probably a foot or two beyond that, but probably about 5 feet in front. And it's going to take, with this bead chain and you're in a foot of water, it's going to take a couple seconds for that to get down into where you want it as it approaches the bottom. And as that comes down, the fish may, it's amazing. They'll see things hit 10 feet away and react to it and run over. Other times, if you threw it in there and they didn't seem to change, uh, let it sink and then just give it, at 5 foot, give it a strip. If they're going crazy, like sometimes like mullet, they're swimming in circles, they're a little on edge. You're gonna have to get it a little closer or throw it right in the middle of the school as gently as possible, and then let it get down. And when it's in the school, I like to strip it pretty aggressively. Um, I don't know if that helps you all out, but you got it's the
Hey,
fish are really aware of plops and movement, and
and while you're scorching that,
yeah,
Rick says he might use Arctic fox in lieu of the polar bear.
that's a good option. Yeah. But there you go. You can see the legs kind of want to splay out on this one. The polar bear, the wings a little wide there. I trim a few of the wild hairs, but that's the Ivan's redbutt. Great fly for sight fishing bones. The next fly is the Boca shrimp. It's a pattern I came up with about 10 years ago, and it's a about a 2.5 to 3 inch long pattern, and I use it here in Southwest Florida. But for bonefish, there's a few little things I like to do. One, of course, is the pink thread nose at the very front, and silly legs are optional. But this pattern, as you see it, is what we're going to tie, and it'll work good. Now, bonefish have pretty big mouths when they want to open them, and they can eat pretty good sized fly. So I know some folks say, well, I've always caught them on number 6 or 8s and, an inch and a half pattern. They can easily, sometimes you'll find this way back in the crushers. So I like this fly. It serves me real well, and it's a great all-around fly here in Southwest Florida for tarpon, reds, snooks, anytime you want to throw a fish, and it works great on bones. So the Boca shrimp from Boca Pila, where I had a trip many years ago, got permit and bonefish on this particular fly. Again, I always used to use the 811S till I had a couple failures, and then went to the Umpqua 401, size 4 or 2. Tonight I'm going to use a size 2 401. Light tan or sand colored denier 210 for the thread. Uh, the craft fur, they have a tan, which I find is a little too dark. I prefer their sand colored craft fur. You don't have to get select. Any craft fur will do. And then to get the barring, I like to do more than just a black bar. I like using at least a light tan followed with some brown. Sometimes I'll underlie that with a little orange to get a little more, I don't know if it's realistic, but a little more interesting looking tail with those segments. The eyes, my go-to extra small lead eyes. I've here in Southwest Florida where you got more brackish freshwater, I find the lead eyes, it sinks too fast. If I'm casting to a red, it makes too much of a disturbance. I'll use bead chain. And if I take a bead chain fly and throw it over in the Bahamas, it just sits on the surface on this pattern. You need to have, with that high salinity and there's quite a difference in the buoyancy of the fly. And the silly legs, which we'll tie a few on tonight as well. Okay, let's see. Anything else? No, I think we can get to the tying then. I'm gonna let me pull the camera and just show you the materials like we did before. Got my permanent markers. The head there I didn't mention is Tarantula brush, 1 inch, and it's got the little rubber legs in it. And I believe it's the tan. Works really well. Black mono eyes. Put that in by the bend of the hook, and a little bit of orange here for like an egg sac. There's some silly leg options. The eyeballs red with black pupils, and the tail, the sandcraft fur. Takes quite a bit actually to get a nice tail and a little bit of copper flash in there. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll get that fly in the vise. Number 2 hook. A little tighter. And you can pinch the barbs down. I'm not going to take the time right now to do that, which isn't much time, but let's get a good thread vase on the hook, and then we'll come back, put the lead eyes on. Nice touching wraps. I like to go partially down the bend of the hook, just helps cover up the hook material. With this 210 now, you can take advantage of the stretch characteristics in the monofilament. It really helps bind things down, and I don't like to use a lot of super glues just because I've had fish, and the only thing I can think of when they run from the fly is it was tied too recently, or they get a whiff of that stuff. I mean, you look at redfish, my God, they can smell so well. They've got all those foramens on their head. And I just think that like some of our dogs at home can smell so much better than we can even appreciate. I just like to minimize the possibility that that's a problem. I'm pretty much leaving this thread just shy of the eyes. And we're going to have that tail come out about a shaft and a half in length past the bend.
While you're getting your materials ready, Rick is asking, what does FWN mean?
Flat wax nylon.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see, where are those scissors? Rather than, nano silk or some other material, it just gives you that stretch characteristic. And the 210 of that size, excuse me, you can spin your thread, create more of a flat thread, which is very helpful at times, or coil it the other way. I like to take some of the longer you want kind of like a flame shape, ideally. But this is we got real low humidity today, which I'm not used to. It's amazing how I somewhat appreciate what you all deal with out there in Idaho.
You've got some fires too, don't you?
Huh?
You have some fires in Florida, don't you?
We sure do. Yeah, it's a problem. Right where I'm at locally, there's some small remote fires, brush fires come up, but I think I was talking to Al and Rick earlier, the Florida Keys were closed there for earlier in the week for a few hours because of some talked to a buddy of mine who lives on Big Pine. He said it was a controlled burn that got out of hand. And I don't know what their cutoff is on wind speed when they do those, or if there is one like a parachutists, they won't drop jumpers if the winds are, you don't train in that nasty windy weather. Okay, we've got the tail there. Now we're going to go to work with the markers. I like to do like 4 segments. I'm going to put a little bit of orange here. Equally spaced. Get the other side. And I'll highlight this with a light brown, another broad swipe. They kind of bleed into each other. I just apply it to the edge of the orange. I think you can see it's coming to life. And then a darker brown just to put this right next to the light brown. It's got a real fine tip, but more of an accent. Get the other side.
I'm amazed with those 3 colors, what a difference in what depth it gave that color. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's for me, it's worth the time, Al. I know a lot of folks, they'll just go with one color and bar it, but just gives you something a little different. The fish, I don't know, if they see the same thing all the time, they're not gonna respond the way you want to. But yeah, okay, so we've got a nice even uh, base by tying in that craft fur right behind the eyes. Now we're going to anyone that's handled shrimp knows they have that black spot in the middle. So that's what these black mono eyes, I tie them in right where the bend starts or under the barb. Little stalk of eyeballs. And I flipped it over with the hook point up. And again, figure 8 it just like we were tying in eyes. Try to keep the tail out of there. And I like to push them up a little bit. It adds a little dimension to the pattern rather than have them lie flat. Okay. Then take a little bit of orange to create like an egg sac or a hot spot. This is just some orange puglisi fiber. Let's make a little piece. That's going to fill in there right where the eyes are. Just going to shorten this a skosh more. You could do something similar with a crab pattern if you're tying a crab pattern. I think it adds a nice little feature there. Let's get those high speed. There we go. So you got your that black spot, you got a little egg sac there. I'm going to flip it over and add a little bit of, I'm going to dress this one up. Put a couple strands of gold copper flash. Some people say antenna. I don't know, but they work pretty nice. Put those in right on top of the tail. And then last but not least, got some silly legs. These are orange with black specks. I don't know if barring's the term I would use on these particular legs, but just going to put one on each side. Not sure we got, let's. One thing I have noticed over the years when you go like say to the Bahamas, fish different lodges, seems like more and more folks are incorporating orange into their bonefish flies and doing quite well. So things like orange silly legs or um, the orange egg sac in this particular fly, not all a bad idea. Okay, what's really left is to use this tarantula brush. Again, this is the 1 inch. It says tan. It's very light tan, like sand colored. It's got a wire core, so when you cut it, either open your scissors real wide or use a wire cutter to cut it so you don't hurt your high-speed scissors. I like to take a little bit of material on either side of the wire, maybe a 1/8 of an inch or so. Get a little cleaner tie-in point. And basically what we're going to do is palmer this forward from the tie-in. Yeah, here we go. Then you've got this wire. It's hard to appreciate or see, but this is just a leg here. I grab the end of it. I give it a bend at 180 so that wire does a U-turn. That way the end of it, when you're really tying down, doesn't cut your thread. That's one of the things you can do. All right, so I get this forward. Get right under the eye. All right. Now we'll just guide this forward. The more of the this brush you put on, of course, the more it's going to want to float and not sink. But that's why you kind of need the lead eyes. Even for a shallow fly, this will land fairly soft. So I'm going to come once over in between the eyes and then tie her off. Try to Hopefully we got it. We'll cut this off. See where they go. All right, got my old scissors. Try to push that end in. Whip finish.
Alan, I love that fly, and if that isn't a bass fly in our part of the world, I don't know what it is. The guys in Texas probably could chime in on that, but that sure looks good to us.
That's cool to hear. I really didn't mean to cut that off after the whip finish because I'd like to just do a quick weed guard. I've got Rio's, there we go, hard alloy, 16 pound. And I'm just kind of crowded myself, so I'm not really only have room for a good single stalk. So I cut off about a 2 to 3 inch section and I use a pair of pliers to flatten the end so it's kind of like a paddle or whatever. It ties in better. I have that flattened section. I don't think you're going to be able to see it very well with this camera. But I keep part of this mono covering the eye of the hook. And this way it prevents the thread from slipping off the end of the weed guard. I don't know if that makes sense, but a couple wraps behind, I'm ready to whip finish. So when that's flat, it covers right over the eye. That thread doesn't slip off. Okay, this could use we're going to trim the weed guard. It's going to have a tent with the eyes. You want it to, go down. So what I need to do is take a little bit of material off this top side. Just try to avoid snipping off your silly legs or anything else. And some of these legs are just a little too long. Cut those back. And then you've got this natural curve, which some folks just like it like that. I like to have more of a straighter weed guard, so I just use my whip finish or something round, hold this and pull forward, and this kind of straightens up the mono. I'll give it it's a little long still. Almost done here. I grab a couple millimeters and then just pull and rotate, and that creates a nice little smooth edge. So check the legs out. Happy with those. Happy with that. And that's the Bokea shrimp.
Looking good. Any questions for Alan?
Great looking fly.
Thank you. And one thing I'll do for the Bahamas, which I'm tying this like I'm going to use it here in Florida, the pink nose, I should have used that to tie on the weed guard, and it'd be perfect for going over to Andros. But this or with a sometimes I use a blue thread to create that nose, change a little color, and that seems to help. Little blue crab-like pattern color, even though it's a shrimp.
So is your weed guard forked? I couldn't tell in the image.
Yeah, it's right.
Is it a single strand or two?
That's a single.
Oh, okay.
Normally I would put a double, but this one's a little longer. And we got this real fine drift algae that sometimes happens. But if you cast it into the mangrove limbs, that's where that weed guard really helps you out. And if you just gently tease the fly out, they'll go over the limb rather than engage it. Some people like to call them fish deflectors. Once in a while, you may not get a good hook set especially if you're using 30-pound or 40-pound fluorocarbon. So anyway, that's the Bokea shrimp, and like I say, catch anything over here on it. Sheep's head, tarpon, reds, and a real nice bonefish fly and permit fly, for that matter.
Yeah, that barring is really nice. That's a very nice touch. Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Alan, the eyes in the back at the hook bend, those are plastic and black. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Mono eyes, usually a large size, works really
Okay. And then you had dark for the barring, you had dark brown and tan, and what was in the middle? Was it peach or
Let me
something?
show you here. I've got these two are, wide tipped. The orange, the tan.
Oh, orange. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a yellowy orange, not a bright orange.
Yeah.
And then the brown is very fine tipped.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And,
Anything else for Ellen?
I just wanted to show another similar fly, similarly barred, but I've got mono eyes on that. I don't know. They don't show very well. And I barred the actual double weed guard.
Thank you now. And without any further ado, let's slide in and we'll talk about the weekly tip. Now, the weekly tip is going to be a touch of LaFontaine magic. We've done this some in the past, but as Gretchen reminded me this week, we probably don't do it as much as we should. And LaFontaine came up with a thing that he called double magic. In fact, we liked it so much, we added it to a lot of our flies, but we also named our LaFontaine style dubbing Double Magic. And that's just what he called it in his book, Double Magic. And what I'd like to do, though, is start with just a little bit of an explanation of touch dubbing, because touch dubbing has an integral part of the process. And I think you'll, in fact, for some of you fly tyers, you're going to see something you probably haven't seen in a while. This went off the market in the I think it was the 80s, if I remember correctly.
90s.
End of the 80s, or the early 90s?
Early 90s.
Okay. Anyway, it's Overton's Wonder Wax. It was manufactured by Glenn Overton from Libby, Montana. I knew Glenn. We weren't great buds, but I taught a couple of classes at his local club there in Libby, Montana. We met at a show in Spokane, Washington, and that's how we got the program set up to teach the classes. And that's when I learned about Overton's Wonder Wax. Stuff was phenomenal until it went off the market and we could no longer get it. And this is our BT's dubbing wax, and it's our answer to Overton's Wonder Wax, only because Overton went off the market. But anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about two styles of touch dubbing. And I'm going to start with the number 10 hook.
Well, one comment about the wax.
Oh, okay, yes.
It's not finger wax. You do not put it on your finger.
A good point.
You
Really
put
good.
it on the thread. And finger wax does not work for dubbing. It's not tacky enough. So just keep that in mind. If you're frustrated with your touch dubbing because it's not working, you might be using the wrong wax.
Well, anyway, I'm going to start with a number 10 hook in the vise if you want to go to the vise,
Oh,
Gretch.
sorry.
And I'm going to just grab my black thread. And all we're going to be doing tonight is applying some dubbing on a couple of hooks, but I'm just going to throw down a quick base here. And we'll just trim that off. And I'll grab my dubbing wax, pull the top off. Now I'm going to turn that top up just like that and set it down. I'll explain why in just a little bit, but the top is facing up. And I'm making sure that the wax is not sticking too far above the edge. I see people often, in fact, let me pull my Overtons over here real quick. This is a tube that I got back from a guy that I had loaned it to him. And you see how that's cranked up? He complained that he was continually getting big clumps of wax off on his thread. Well, the reason is the thread would cut it through there and allow the clumps to break free. I call it the plowed field effect. But anyway, if you just have it barely peek up above the edge, you don't slice it up quite so bad, so you just get some sticky wax on the thread rather than some big clumps of wax. So now I'm going to go ahead and wax my thread. And notice that I'm not trying to get a whole lot on there. I just want it to be sticky, not full of wax. And I want you to notice that I'm turning this upside down and it's going straight into the cap. That's very important, and I always talk to you folks about that, and I keep forgetting it myself. And earlier this week, I dropped that in the trash bin. And let me tell you, with the cap off of it, it makes a mess. I've got my double magic, and Gretchen says, why don't you try some peacock? Because normally we do the double magic with a contrasting color, but she says, why don't you try it this time with this? Well, for right now, I'm just doing touch dubbing. And there's two styles of touch dubbing. There's a touch twist and LaFontaine style touch dubbing. And I'm just going to start by just putting this touch dubbing, if you will, all along that strand of thread. And you can see now that it's sticking out all along here like you'd want. Now, touch twist is just what you might think. It's you've touched it on the thread, you twist it in place. And touch dubbing LaFontaine style is you don't do anything to it. You just leave it there and wrap it on. Surprisingly, it doesn't come off. Now, you get a whole different kind of an application when you twist it in place. In fact, you can tie some awful good nymphs by twisting up the dubbing that goes on the back of the fly and the thorax area. You fill it in with the touch dub. And what you end up, you're surprisingly, that's pretty tough. It stays there and it's buggy as heck in the water. Okay, so now we know about touch dubbing. I'm just going to tie this guy off real quick. Take this out and let me get another hook here. We're going to talk about double magic. And if you've never heard of this before and you haven't seen us demonstrate this, I really recommend you take a look because you're looking at something that can revolutionize your nymph fishing. And I'm just going to put down a thread base. And now what we normally do, but we're not tonight, we're using this peacock double magic dubbing. And what we're going to do is do a touch dubbing on the thread that becomes a loop, a dubbing loop for some peacock herl that will end up making a body that has peacock core with peacock highlights. That was Gretchen's idea to do that. Normally, we add highlights to a peacock body based on the LaFontaine theory of attraction, which is basically finding a color in the environment that you're fishing and making sure it's in your fly. Example, we fish alpine forests in central Idaho all the time, and those alpine forests have got a lot of green. So you take a peacock body, and the LaFontaine dubbing would be some kind of green. It would give you green highlights to accent the peacock body.
Just a comment about what I'm seeing on the camera. That is not showing the green that's in that. So the color of that peacock dubbing is a little different.
Okay, well, I'm going to start by putting wax on my thread. And I messed up and I laid just that tube down, and I just about laid this down. I know it would have knocked it in there, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to touch dub to that with that peacock dubbing. Now I'm just going to let that hang there. Now I'm going to reach over to my materials area, and I've got some peacock herl here. I'll just grab several strands of that. And we'll take this back over to the vise. And it looks all pretty good there. I'll cut all the squigglies off the end here. Flip it over so that I can tie it on by the tips. And these are very, very fragile out here on the very tips, so I'm going to cut back to about there and then tie it on from there. Now I'm just going to pull this around in parallel to that dub thread, and I'm going to take a plunger type tool and anchor it on that, and then bring a dubbing loop around and tie that off right there in the front and wrap the thread forward. Now what we're going to do is twist this dubbing covered thread and the peacock together, and you don't see much, but we don't care what you see, we care what the fish sees. And I'll guarantee you those highlights that you see along there are killers. Once I learned this trick from Gary, it has been on all of our subsurface flies in one form or another. If it's a fly that has any peacock in its construction, or there's a few other materials that we do as well. And we'll just cut that off.
Do you have the UV light that you could shine on there?
Yeah, I'll have to find it. And let's see.
While he's looking for the UV light, remember that poly and Antron are different fibers. The Antron is a trilobal and it refracts light differently. Maybe you can see a little bit of the...
All I can tell you is this: if you're looking for a aha moment and a big flash of light in front of your eyes with this particular technique, forget it. What this is a technique that doesn't catch fishermen, it catches fish. And if you haven't used it, treat yourself to it. If you don't have access to Beattys double magic dubbing with the special mix of Antron.
The UV light.
Okay.
Let's see what it looks like. Just
There
do
you go.
this.
If you don't have that, find Antron somewhere and put some of those strands of Antron in a dubbing loop along with your peacock, and do that. But add some very subtle highlights to the outside of your peacock body. Well, if there's no questions on that, good.
Al, this is Roger.
Yes.
Is there a particular color you want to utilize that with the peacock? Could it be light bluish green? What?
This was an experiment tonight with Gretchen's idea of taking peacock double magic dubbing and using it as highlights around the peacock body. And under normal conditions, we carry about four different color combinations of this. And we'll talk about the color combination that we use here in Central Idaho. We use highlights from dubbing that's the lime green. And that makes a lime green flashes around the outside of that peacock body. And that works incredibly well. in the mountains in central Idaho, where it's basically a high alpine forest type of environment. Clear, broken water. Unlike, I would use something different on the Yellowstone, very honestly. Well, yellow and stone. Yellow. You use a dusty yellow color as the highlight. If you're fishing when we worked for whiting farms in Colorado, the Gunnison River was there, and that Gunnison River ran through a canyon that was basically a rusty orange gray. So orange in your fly was what you would use as the highlights
Or we use
around the
the
body.
light rust too.
The light rust as well.
Works really good.
So take a look at your environment that you're fishing. And the LaFontaine theory of attraction states that you want to have some type of color in your fly that is predominant in the environment.
If you have a color that is opposite on the color scale, for example, if you're fishing in a really green environment and your fly is totally red, it doesn't show up. There's something about the green environment that subdues the red color. That's the best way to put it. And you'd think it would be the opposite. You'd think it would outline and show up more, but that's not true.
There was one of the places on the Gunnison River, I told you that we always put rusty orange highlights around the peacock bodies. Well, you got to remember now, let's go back to that word that says environment. When you're on the main river, you were in the rusty orange canyons and all that stuff. But there were 3 places on that river when I was guiding people on it where there were side streams that came in. And when you would step out of the main river and start up that side channel, you entered a whole new environment. It was willows hanging over the water, blue sky willows. You just changed your environment. And if you were fishing with the rusty orange ones that were working a few minutes ago down in the main river, you were kind of wasting your time in comparison to stopping and tying on one that had some green highlights to go along with the new environment you just entered.
On the sparkle pupa, which is one of Gary's main flies, that Antron is just plain Antron fibers, not the dubbing.
Yeah.
And what it does is it makes kind of a halo effect when the light refracts and it looks like a shuck.
Yeah, it looks like a shuck that has air bubbles trapped in
So
it.
sometimes we will leave some trailing pieces if we want it to look like that.
Yeah. But any other questions? All right, then we're on to the next feature. And it's sharing on Beattys Fly Tying Friday. And this is the section where you all get to share with us, and we'll share stuff if we have something to share. And I do have a story to share, but for right now, what we're going to do is to come back to all of you, and let me remove the spotlight from us. And there's 2 people I'm going to want to hear from tonight to start off with is Jeff and David. So I've got them set up, and Jeff, if you're ready to go, I asked Jeff to do me a favor. You might want to unmute yourself, Jeff. The reason that I wanted Jeff to help me out is, Jeff, you were going to share a fly with us. I think it was the caterpillar lapidura or something like that.
Okay.
And he is sharing flies like many of you share flies with us on the sharing section. And it's difficult to really make out the fly to do that. Well,
Can you see it?
Yeah, we
yes.
can see it good. That fly has good
that fly shows up really good.
contrast.
And the reason I picked on Jeff is because Jeff has got some of the best ideas of the ideas that are brought forth in this channel. Some very good ideas, but sometimes they're just difficult as heck to see. Because think about if Jeff had this. In fact, this is an item that we make. Let me get up here and force it to focus on the camera. Come on, get up here and focus. There we go. All right.
Oh,
now
wow.
I'm sharing a fly with you, just like you guys would, shoving it right at your computer and the camera right at the top of the computer. And that's just a very simple thing. And all you guys have to do is get yourself a piece of cardboard a popsicle stick or whatever, and a hackle pliers. And you use that to hold your fly. And you can take a very difficult situation and sharing a really great pattern and allow everyone to see it. Just that little bit with all you have to do, and you just shove it straight at your computer camera, which is right up here. So in the future, think about having one of these laying next to wherever you're going to share a pattern or whatever you're going to share with us. And Jeff, just before we leave you and go on to David, I wanted to remind you, you and I have to figure out how to do that Thompson comb wing thingy do tool that you've got. I've never seen that before, and I've been having nightmares about that darn thing. So we have to figure out some way to demonstrate that to all the folks. So that's for us to work on the side. But anyway, now I'm going to go to David Buckner, and David suffers from insomnia. And last week we talked about using heat to shape hair. Well, David got stuck in the kitchen when he couldn't sleep the other night, and he used the hair dryer and a spoon to reshape some hair, and he made a wavy clouser. You want to tell us anything about these insomnia days of yours, Dave?
Yeah, I started thinking about manipulating deer hair. We had a large conversation about it last week, and it came to me, and I actually used a heat shrink gun on that, and tried different ways to manipulate the deer hair bucktail in the board, and made two different waves with that guy as well.
So you can wrap your hair in and out of that and then run the heat gun over it to bend that hair in the different directions you want it to go.
Right. That was back and forth through all the nails, and I think this one was just on one line of nails.
All right. I see a chance of adding some motion to the fly, but again, that's what this program that we got coming up, Flies in Motion. We're going to try to figure out different things that create motion that may seem to add life to patterns that may make fishing better. But okay, then, all of you, any of you have something that you want to share?
I've got something else, Al.
Oh, Jeff, was
Yep.
that? Okay,
Yes.
just a second here. Let me spotlight you for everyone. There you go.
Okay.
Jesus, what's that?
Dollar Tree.
Oh,
These are pool toys, and you cut the little fingers off of those things.
squiggle flies.
And you can tie them on the jigs, and next week I'll have the jigs finished, and I'll show you a couple of the jigs. But $1.25, and you get a lifetime supply.
Oh boy.
Those things, and they make very nice flies for crappie, trout, and the list goes on.
Well, I that's a San Juan worm if I ever saw it.
Yes,
but
it works very similar. And
anyway, any other questions for Jeff?
You can put two back to back like that and make the San Juan worm too.
I just want to follow up with the Antron that you were talking about. And this is if you can read that there, it's clear and brown Antron mix. Okay. Look at it, and it just looked like, Antron. But when you do this,
oh yeah,
that is clear Antron mixed in with regular Antron.
Really jumps, doesn't it?
Yeah. So by adding the clear, if you really want to enhance, because once you take the light off it, it just looks brown. And you can see how that just jumps.
That really, really does demonstrate what that Antron does.
Yeah, and by adding that even more into that loop that you were doing, you can just imagine, what you see and then what the fish sees.
Sure,
and hopefully
for sure.
with the UV, I don't know. The fish haven't told me yet, but Jerry's still out on that. I wish someone would do more about UV underwater.
It's basically a squala, and it uses a closed cell on the back. You've got an egg sac here that dips in, and then that's closed cell um, black um, foam, and then the body is using the uh, olive dun uh, kapok, and then the underwing is CDC in olive dun. Well, no, that's a natural CDC in the dun, and then it's got elk hair for the overwing, and then you got the legs. Um, and you can use different colored legs and stuff, but to do this head or to get this elk hair on here, you put the elk hair out the front, and
What do
then
you do? Then fold it over?
you fold it over, but you
Yeah,
just do it over the top so that
sure.
you don't do it on the bottom.
Well, you have enough flotation in that thing to float a truck, don't you?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Well, everyone, we've had a great time this evening with all of you on Fly Tying Friday with the Beattys. Please join us again next Friday. But for now, it's a wrap. Well, everyone, we've had a great time this evening with all of you on Fly Tying Friday with the Beattys. Please join us again next Friday. But for now, it's a wrap.